I think it's like a lot of shows. I've noticed this with the Star Wars animated shows like Clone
Yeah,
Wars and Rebels and that. They start off very different to how they end, and I think it's because they got to be a bit more careful to try and introduce it to people. And then
yeah,
once they find a footing, they can change it into something a bit more serious. The Clone Wars, for example, and Star Wars Rebels both started off very kid friendly,
yeah.
but they got darker as it went along once
Mm,
they'd got the audience in.
exactly that. With Rebels, I do feel like I'm not all the way through done with it yet. I do feel like it feels quite dumbed down compared to most of the years of Clone Wars.
Yeah, totally, totally. Clone Wars was a lot more sort of grown up, and
Yeah,
Rebels was like a stage younger. I mean, it did get better as it went along, but then I tried to watch Star Wars Resistance, which was set for an even younger age group,
yeah.
and I must have watched 10 episodes, hoping it would get better, and it kind of didn't. I was like,
That's
oh, it's horrible. Um, their lead character is completely accident prone and should not be trusted with the rebel secrets. But
oh
every
my.
every week he's bumping into things and dropping important things, and it was like, really,
Yeah.
it was horrible.
That sounds like something I'd have loved as a kid, but that would be a tedium to watch now.
Yeah, there was a lot of slapstick in it, and why Poe Dameron would entrust this accident-prone kid who's clumsy and gets caught by the stormtroopers every 2 minutes with fate of the rebellion is completely beyond me, because it's like,
That's it for me. Like, I feel to very briefly continue on Star Wars. Like, I feel like Disney are finally getting the hang of it. They've had the license for nearly 10 years, and they're
yeah,
starting to get into their zone now.
yeah. I think it was because of obviously the success of the Mandalorian.
Mm.
They just managed to find the right end of Dave Filoni, who would learn the ropes of Star Wars through Clone Wars and Rebels and everything else, and then that translated to live action via Jon Favreau, who had sort of learned how to do action and live action stuff via Marvel. So
Yes, yeah,
that it's a good kind of combination to have those two together. Filoni being the Star Wars expert and Favreau being the live action uh, fantasy, movie making.
well, if you look at it, he's responsible for not directly, and it's not all his fault, but he was the first one to strike hard with Marvel.
Yeah, yeah. It was a risk.
Yeah,
I watched a retrospect recently about the making of Iron Man, and everyone was saying at the time, it's like we've got a small office here in the Disney building. There's about 20 of us working on it. We've got no idea if it's going to be any good. Everything's a risk. We're doing things we could do. We've cast Robert Downey Jr. and everyone thinks he's a write-off.
yeah.
That's going to be the biggest mistake. And luckily, everything came together at the right time. Iron Man wasn't even a very popular character. Most people wouldn't know who he was before the movie.
No,
He was
exactly.
like a C-list character because they didn't have the rights for Captain America or Spider-Man, so they had to use whatever they could. And the biggest character they had at the time was Iron Man. So
Yeah.
luckily, it worked.
If I remember rightly, so this is me growing up. Spider-Man was wonderful. I knew who Iron Man was because he was in the 90s show, and him and War Machine. And I thought War Machine was the hero of the two. Like that's what I thought growing up, And
Yeah.
they what Marvel have done right is they found smaller characters and made them bigger. I think they've done quite a good job of that.
A lot of that is, I think, they've been forced to.
Yeah.
If, for example, again, if Terry Nation said, no, we decided you can't use the Daleks, Russell T Davies would have gone with the Toclafane or whatever, and he would have had to, well, you move within your own parameters. If you're not allowed to use Daleks and Cybermen, then you make the best of what you've got. So, Marvel didn't have the rights to Captain America, the Hulk, the Fantastic Four, X-Men. So they said, well, what else can we use? And we've got Iron Man, we've got Blade, we've got very, very little else. Everything else, all their big characters were licensed out to different studios, and to a certain extent, the Hulk. They've only just got Daredevil back, but the Hulk is still with Universal, and Spider-Man is still shared with Sony. So they're not Marvel properties just yet.
That's the strange thing as well. They've been able to build up this empire, but there's still people willing to say no to them.
Yeah. Sony have always, every time they do a new Tom Holland Spider-Man type thing, they basically Sony has to sit down with Marvel and discuss the terms, because in truth, they need each other really.
Yeah.
If Sony handed over Spider-Man back to Marvel, Marvel would have to completely reboot Spider-Man from the beginning, which would annoy a lot of people. So why not keep the collaboration going between the two studios, and that could benefit the pair of them, and it has worked so far.
Absolutely. And again, on a distribution level, they still haven't come to an agreement on Spider-Man.
Yeah. Again, same with the Hulk. Universal are even less willing to deal with strike a deal with Marvel, so
yeah,
that's why there's no Hulk solo movie.
I think a lot of that would have been they wanted that main actor. I cannot remember his name for the life of me, but who was in that version of the Hulk, the most recent one they did.
Oh, Ed Norton, is it?
Ed Norton, yes. They wanted him creating. They wanted him to have a creative role as the Hulk. That's how much he liked the movie. Going forward, he wanted to write for future Hulk movies.
That's right, yeah.
And for whatever reason, Marvel weren't willing to do that.
Yeah, so they had to recast for the Avengers really quickly.
Yeah.
And Mark Ruffalo's done a good job, fair play to it.
Yeah.
But it's weird that the Ed Norton Hulk movie is seen as part of the MCU.
Yeah.
It's because Robert Downey Jr. makes a cameo at the end. And the previous Hulk film, the Eric Bana one, is not part of the MCU. It's a complete standalone Universal movie.
And that wasn't even that long before, was it? Was that 2001?
No. Everyone thought the Ed Norton one was a sequel to the Ang Lee film, and it kind of was. You could kind of see it as that, but in the in-universe explanation is it's not. It's nothing to do with it. So very strange.
What was they also shot themselves in the foot of this because they actually brought over characters who were in that movie. I can't remember what the commander's called, the grey-haired commander.
Yes, you've got General Thunderbolt Ross.
Yes.
And obviously Betty is another character, which played by Liv Tyler in the Ed Norton film, and then it was the actress whose name completely escapes me from Cyberon.
Yeah.
She was in the original.
Yeah. Names not coming to me, but they've made an active choice to make that part of the chronology.
Yeah. So it does confuse people. Audiences who are not major geeks or whatever would be going, I don't know what's going on with this now. Is this before this?
Yeah.
When Rogue One came out, people didn't know Rogue One sat in the Star Wars. They're like, well, how come the Death Star's back? How come Grand Moff Tarkin's back? I thought he died in. People can't work out where it's set. So it's confusing. Doctor Who does that as well.
Oh no, of course. Like I say, with shows, a lot of shows like that, movies like that, they do things assuming that the fan base know things already, and sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that can alienate your audience.
Yeah,
it's like the Solo movie. Even though I think that's quite well done, I think a lot of people went into it having questions that weren't answered, about Han Solo. And such an again, like I said, I think Disney now have a hand on it. I think that it is moving in the right direction, but there's been a lot of teething problems.
Yeah. They've got to tread carefully because I think with Star Wars, there's I'm not tired of Star Wars yet, but I do think there is too much being announced at once.
Yeah. There's like 9 shows on the way or something like that.
Yeah, they announced, everything from Lando and Andor and Obi-Wan and Rangers of the Republic and all these things. It's like, slow down, give us one a year or something, Don't announce. And the thing is, don't announce 20 things if 19 of those things are never going to get made.
That's it. DC I did a video about DC quite recently.
They announced they announced Black Adam like 10 years ago, and only now they've started on it. So the Flash was on and off like nobody's business. So
it's such,
announcing so much stuff.
there's so much going on in the geek world, I guess, you know.
Yeah,
At the
totally.
minute, it's wonderful.